Back at it here on the Two Deep NFL podcast. Very excited tonight as we have a chance to bring you the assistant head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders, Marvin Lewis, one of my favorite coaches ever to cover, ever to deal with. I've had the pleasure to talk with him a couple of times. Jeff Chadiha from NFL Network, Eric Eager from Sumer Sports. My name is Soren Petro from Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. We're going to talk about where things stand right now with the Raiders as Coach Lewis, now the assistant head coach. Antonio Pierce, a guy I know, Steve Spagnuolo, the team I cover, raved about and said he always knew he would be a head coach. We'll talk about Antonio Pierce and what he thinks of Antonio, as a lot expected of him, certainly. Where are the Raiders right now? What's it like chasing a team like the Kansas City Chiefs? He coached Jayden Daniels at Arizona State. Got some insight there. Drafted a quarterback, of course, after 10 years of no playoffs. Marvin Lewis was hired with the Bengals, and he went to 7 of them, including 5 in a row. What it takes to turn a team around, and waiting for that first job. We'll get into all of it right now here on the Two Deep NFL podcast.
You're listening to the Two Deep Podcast, the most complete analysis of the National Football League, breaking down the NFL like no one else can. Two Deep is hosted by Jeff Chadiha, Eric Eager, and Soren Petro. Jeff Chadiha is a senior columnist and on-air personality for the NFL Network and NFL.com. Eric Eager is the vice president of research and development for Sumer Sports. Soren Petro is the afternoon drive host of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. Two Deep is proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear since 1994. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lot. Now, here are the hosts of the Two Deep Football Podcast, Jeff Chadiha, Eric Eager, and Soren Petro.
Thank you very much, Curtis. We do appreciate it. Remember, if you're catching us via the podcast, we stream live Tuesday nights at 9 p.m. Central. You can catch us and be a part of the conversation. A lot of people lined up in the chat room, but Jeff, I'll give you the honors. Let's not waste any time. You reached out to Coach Lewis, Marvin Lewis. He was kind enough to join us. I'll let you make the introduction.
Yeah, excited to have him on the show. I've known Marvin Lewis a long time, going back to his days with the Baltimore Ravens and obviously the Bengals. Obviously, much admiration and respect for the career he's had, and I'm excited to get him on the show to talk about all the things that are happening now. He's back in the game after spending a few years at Arizona State. So welcome onto the show, Marvin.
Thank you, Jeff and Soren and Eric. Great to be with you guys this evening.
It's great to have you, Coach, and we do appreciate it. And listen, what like is it? The NFL versus college. Let's start right there. An itch you wanted to scratch with Coach Edwards. We're big fans of Herm as well, and one of the great guys. I know, just getting a chance to work with him. I know I do a little work on ESPN with him from time to time, and I always love that. That's a treat. So I can understand the attraction there. But why college? Why now back to the NFL?
Well, we were going to obviously at some point we were going to move to Scottsdale. We have 3 grandsons there now, and so it was an easy transition. And Herm and I had been friends. Ray Anderson was the athletic director, who had been friends for a long time, since 2099, I guess, probably. And so it was great to be a part of the program. And then I spent there last year with Coach Kenny Dillingham, and I'm really excited about where the direction of the program and everything that's going on now. I think Kenny is one of the rising stars in coaching, so I'm excited about the things they're doing.
Well, Coach, I'll start off first. Now that you're back in the league with the Raiders as the head coach, first of all, how did that happen? How did Antonio get you involved in this? I know you guys coached together at Arizona State, but how did he reach out to you and get you back into the game?
Well, actually, AP reached out. He called me a few hours as they were making the transition, and he was going to be named the interim head coach. And he's like, hey, I think this is going to happen this evening. If it does, when can you get here? And I was still busy with Arizona State, and our season was still going on. And then literally the Monday after our last game, unfortunately I lost to U of A. I had my other hip replaced, and I waited a week, and then I got on a plane to Las Vegas. And I spent the rest of the season back and forth to Las Vegas each and every week. And made, they sent me a login right away to be able to watch practice every day, to help do some strength and weakness analysis of the opponents upcoming, and send to both AP and the coordinators. So I really enjoyed it. And when I got to come over in person, I really enjoyed the staff. I really thought they worked very, very hard, and the players were very hard working. So it was really a great experience for me, and uplifting, let alone, hopefully I was able to add something.
Well, you've known Antonio for a long time. What do you see in him that makes you think he's going to be a successful head coach with this franchise?
Well, I got to coach him in 2002, and that's when the association started, when I was back there with the now Washington Commanders. Antonio was in his second year. He had actually got a high ankle sprain in training camp and really didn't participate much in the preseason, if at all, I think. He was very concerned whether he was going to make the club or not. But I had seen enough of him when he got to play as a rookie under Coach Schottenheimer on defense, and I really felt like I'd have a role for him, and that's the way it worked out. So, and then he's so driven. He's very smart. He's very thorough, and he was that as a player. And then I got, like you said, I spent 3 seasons with him at Arizona State, and really enjoyed my time there with him. And we kind of co-coordinated the defense the COVID year. And then I passed the baton. I said, "Here you go, big fella. You got it." And he came in during that season, during the bye week. He's like, "How am I doing?" I said, "AP, you're really doing great. I'm really impressed." I said, but you got to learn how to relax just a touch. You got to learn how to take a deep breath, take a step back, and relax a little bit before you drive yourself into the ground. And I said, but now I know why you became such a good player. He is very, very driven to be the very, very best, very thorough as well.
Coach, when you look at a guy, as you said, with Antonio in this role, you obviously were a head coach, had a ton of success in the NFL, have seen the ups and seen the downs. When you're taking on this role here, you're in a rare position, right? You're an assistant head coach where you don't have to be a coordinator on either side of the ball. How do you see that role in helping shape a guy like Antonio Pierce's career, right? Because this is a special circumstance where you come in as an interim coach in a situation in Vegas where, it hasn't been a place where coaches have had a terrible amount of success over the course of the last, 20, 30 years. And yet I think Pierce has had, obviously he had a playing career where he was a middle linebacker on a Super Bowl team. His players clearly love him. Max Crosby came out and said he wanted to be traded if they didn't stick with him as head coach. And where do you see that role as assistant head coach? And do you see other successful head coaches in the NFL also growing into this role as it evolves? Because we have younger coaches, in Los Angeles, you had Brandon Staley, who just was let go, of course. You have Dave Canales, a very young guy who just got his first head coaching job. You had Mike McDonald is now going to go in Seattle. You have all these guys who are very clearly talented, who are getting early career head coaching jobs, who may not have the mentorship that Antonio is going to have. Do you see this as an advantage for him? And do you see possible other roles for guys like you who have had, like I said, successful careers in the NFL? And do you see that as a possibility for other teams to carve out a role like that for their clubs?
Well, I think there's been a few guys, kind of around that have reached out that way and are in positive roles. People ask me, what is your job? And I tell them, speak when spoken to. The thing about Antonio, he has no ego. He has no problem grabbing me or coming in my office and say, "Hey, what do you think about this? This is what I'm thinking." and he's been that way from the start. But, John Fox has done that with a couple of clubs lately. Dom Capers is with Coach Canales there with Carolina. So you have these coaches that are reaching out, Mike Vrabel now, doing some work with Cleveland. So guys that have had head coaching experience that other coaches are reaching out and saying, Wade Phillips was with Sean McVay when Sean, started there with the Rams. And so having those people already been a head coach and walk that walk a little bit gives a coach with lesser experience maybe an opportunity as a sounding board to bounce ideas off of and kind of help steady the rudder a little bit.
Coach, how important, I heard some of the comments of Antonio Pierce on a podcast, and, Jeff and I live here in Kansas City. And so Chiefs fans, he talked about, maybe kind of, get after Patrick Mahomes. And we've seen, Jeff and I said, well, I get this, right? Because we've seen everybody seemingly not want to irritate Patrick Mahomes.
No. We told Pat we were just kidding.
But I mean, what is it like, when you do stare up? Pat's really established himself here over the last 4 or 5 years as kind of the dominant force in the league. And when you got to play that twice every year, coupled with Andy Reid, what is the mindset when you set sail to try to knock him off?
Believe me, there's the utmost respect for Coach Reid, Patrick, and the Kansas City Chiefs in the Las Vegas Raiders headquarters. We know who we're chasing. You know what I'm saying? When you're in the National Football League, you've got to build a football team to win and compete in your division and then your conference, and you go from there. And there's no question, who's out front right now in the National Football League and in the AFC West. So, Coach Harbaugh now coming to the Chargers. You have Sean there in Denver. So we've got, it's a really strong division, in my opinion, and one that you've got to play, great football in and week out. But, as you mentioned, Patrick Mahomes is at the top of the heap, what he does and how he plays and his feel and his, what he does in that offense is second to none right now in the National Football League.
Marvin, I want to go to the Bengals, where you had obviously your success as a head coach. You were there for 16 years. And I'm curious to get your perspective as you watch them from afar now, because people, some of the younger people who are watching this podcast probably don't remember when they were really bad, when you showed up and had to really turn them into a winner. And as you watch them now, what they're doing with Joe Burrow and trying to make some decisions about who to keep, who to pay, what goes through your mind about how they've been able to sustain the success, knowing some of the challenges you had to go through when you first got there as a head coach?
Yeah, I actually got an opportunity, obviously, to be up close and personal last year when they put Chad Johnson in the Ring of Honor. And I got an opportunity to spend 2 hours there with the Brown family Monday afternoon, which was just awesome. And but be on the field early in pregame and just see that football team up close and personal, how big, strong, and physical they look. And the receivers came over, and, they're talking to Chad. I'm like, wow, look at these dudes, man. T. Higgins, and these guys are built, and just they're big men, big, strong, physical men. Who I got my Sam Hubbard Yeti cup right here, right now, and so I'm a fan. And it was the first time I had an opportunity to be close to Joe Burrow like that. And, they're an impressive football team, what they have done. The defense, the offense, special teams, all the way around, all three phases clicking. Obviously, they've had to make some decisions this year as far as going forward. Once you bring that quarterback off that rookie contract, now you've got to make some changes around the rest of the football team. And I know how the family thinks there, and it's been well thought out, well planned, and they try to keep as many of the pieces in place as they can. They've gone out and signed another offensive tackle to help shore up and make sure they protect that quarterback. So, they're doing the things that they can do to keep them at the top of the AFC North.
And kind of circling back to your time in Cincinnati, because I just wrote an article for our website about sitting young quarterbacks, because there's going to be a draft where I think at least 4 quarterbacks are going to be taken in round 1, and probably as many as 6. And you obviously, when you were in Cincinnati, I think a lot of people, I think rightfully so, feel like you built the thing the right way. You took Carson Palmer in the first overall pick in 2003. You played John Kitna the whole year. You didn't even play Carson one snap in year 1. And then he comes in and he's a Pro Bowler by year 2. He's got you in the playoffs. You know, you're a perennial contender with him. Do you think that model can work in the NFL now with how short the window is with the rookie contract and how much pressure there is to play the guy right away? And how does that influence the way in which you mentor Antonio now, vis-a-vis now that you guys have Jayden as your quarterback, and whether or not you guys are going to make a decision with what to do at that position? Because it is back when Carson was the number 1 pick, right? You had to the windows were longer. You could sign a young quarterback for a 4, 5, 6 year deal, and the economics were different. Now you know, with Jordan Love, the Packers had to decide whether to pay him $25 million in his 5th year option before even seeing him play. And it's just such a harder idea. How much different is it now? And do you think if you had the opportunity, if you had drafted Carson today and you had the same economics and the same, you know, pressures as a team faces now, would you have made the same decision?
You know, that's the $100 million question, because that's what Carson's first contract after his rookie deal was worth.
Yeah, exactly. That's right.
And that's chump change now. That's chump change. But you know, when I got the job, obviously the team had struggled a bit, and I had so many of the veteran players come in and say, "Marv, we don't need a quarterback. We got Kit. Kit's our quarterback." You know, and they were just set on that they didn't want to have to endure the ups and downs of playing with another rookie quarterback. Now, for me, we were so fortunate there was a first-round pick there. There was the number 1 pick was there in Carson, a guy that was deserving, a guy that had all the ability and so forth, and yet he had a patience to him to be able to endure that. Now I think it's more difficult, like you said. Carson was put together differently, but we did prepare him each and every week as though he was the starting quarterback. And literally, John, it's your ball, take care of it. And then literally that following February made the change and said, now Carson, it's yours. But, you know, maybe we get to the playoffs earlier. You know, I don't know that. But I do know that John Kitna was a great mentor for Carson. And that was really helpful to Carson's career, both as a player, as a quarterback, and as a teammate. He taught Carson how to be a great NFL player. And he taught him all the right things, how to be a great teammate. And that was really important. But, you know, today I'd probably do it differently, honestly. You know, I think you put him in there and you build the football team around that. We had to do that, you know, basically 10 years later with Andy, you know, or 9 years later. And we built the football team around him. We brought on Bruce Gradkowski to help mentor Andy, you know, his rookie year. And so, you know, those are the things you got to do, I think, to build that room, build the success of the football team. But that was not easy. I had the veteran players a couple of times, you know, come and say, hey, we're chartering the jet. We're going to get Carson. You guys don't understand. Carson's not coming back. Let's go. Andy's our guy. Let's go.
Well, yeah, and you guys kind of struck gold because Kitna was good enough your first year to keep Carson on the bench, which most of the time there's a lot of times I did this research, like Chad Henne's not good enough to keep Blake Bortles on the bench. Matt Castle's not good enough to keep Teddy Bridgewater on the bench. Kitna was legitimately good enough to make you guys competitive, and then he stayed around after to mentor him even after Carson started to play, which most guys like Alex Smith was traded after he mentored Patrick here in Kansas City and so forth. And so it was a unique situation, which I don't know if, like to your point, Marvin, that does it ever happen again? That's a really good question. I thought a very interesting answer there.
Well, and I think management also plays a big part in that. And you gotta, kudos to Mike Brown for allowing us to go about it that way and not pushing a player on us and that way. And so I think that's the other part of it. Is Mike showed a lot of patience. Obviously he loves quarterbacks, and when I would talk to him over the last since they drafted Joe. And he's just always so nice. Mike, you got a quarterback. You're good.
Coach, I remember when you got hired. I remember, first of all, I remember talking to you as the DC at the Super Bowl when you're DC of the Ravens. And a lot of your questions you were getting is, when are you going to be a head coach, right? That's what you had to answer a lot of the questions for as you were getting ready to play the Giants. And, of course, you didn't get that head coaching job from that. You ended up leaving and going to Washington. You turned that defense around. It was almost like they said, prove it again, Coach. Like, we need you to prove it again. How frustrated were you, and do you think the timeline was fair on when you finally got that first head coaching job? Because you obviously validated it once you got the shot, but it seemed like you were ready for it 2 or 3 years before you got the shot.
Well, I don't know, I don't know when we know if we're ready. For that part, first off, I thought it was a unique situation because while we're in the playoffs, there's obviously 3 or 4 jobs that are open. Detroit, Cleveland, I think San Francisco, and Buffalo for sure. And, and at some point I decided that probably it was best for me to stay put right then at that time. And it, it obviously worked out. And the next year I spent time with Tampa Bay, Rich McKay, the Glaziers, and prior to that, even the Carolinas before John Fox got the job. And then decided to go to Washington. And I learned a lot. That year I spent in Washington, it was great for me to go and be again around another first-time head coach. I was so fortunate. From Bill Cowher to Brian Billick to Coach Spurrier, I learned so much from each of those men. They were all 3. Coach Spurrier had been a head coach in college, but all 3 first-time NFL head coaches. And I was able to learn so much from them. And the staffs I was on with the more veteran coaches. Because, when I got the job in Pittsburgh, I was the young guy. And other than Bill was 34, I was 33. So I learned so much from the rest of the staff on how to do things. And, coaching with Dick LeBeau, Dom Capers, Ron Earhart, Dick Holt, guys like that were just tremendous. Chan Gailey, that really were so helpful to me in my career. And, I learned how to deal with so many of the ups and downs you go through as an NFL coach.
Marvin, I'm curious because you obviously drafted Carson, but you've also been in the college ranks for the last few years, and you've had a chance to be up close and personal with Jayden Daniels. You've been able to watch Caleb Williams on the opposite sideline. What's your impression of those guys now that you've been able to see those guys as a college coach and what they can do in the NFL?
Yeah, Jeff, I got in the wrong conference this last couple of years.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean to tell you now.
Yeah.
There's a couple of guys that are going to come out in the next couple of years too. They're going to turn people's heads. And but obviously Jayden and being around him as a freshman, and when I first started over there at ASU, and I remember Herm coming to me after the first week of training camp and saying, "Hey, you think it's okay if I go ahead and name Jayden the starting quarterback?" I said, "Coach, if you feel that's where you are, then it's probably best to let's get it out the way and move forward." And obviously Jayden has not disappointed. And I'm so happy for him to see his growth from his first year at LSU to this year. It's been incredible. And then we go to Caleb Williams, studying him at Oklahoma, as he's transferring to SC, as we're getting ready to play. excuse me, USC in the summer, and how impressed I was with him, and seeing him, how he carries himself for 2 years now, excuse me, on the field before the game and so forth within the game. Really impressed with him. Penix, the last 2 seasons, being, against him at Washington. Bo Nix this year, this year at Oregon. But Kenny coming a year ago, and everything Kenny talking about him all the time, and watching him, So, yeah, it's been great to actually see these young players this up close and personal. And, I think they all have opportunities to have great careers in the National Football League.
I think we can see what those quarterbacks do to a defensive coach. You got all choked up.
You see, I used to have hair. I'm looking at this on the screen. I'm like, whoa.
Coach Lewis, hey, thanks so much for giving us some of your time. We appreciate it. It's great to have you back in the league. We don't listen, for a guy who grew up in Kansas City, I don't love seeing you in the silver and black, but it's at least a healthy rivalry. Always one of my favorites to talk to, and we really appreciate you coming on and giving us a little bit of a football education. It'll be great seeing you on the sidelines.
Well, it's my pleasure, guys. Great to be with you. Soren, everybody says, everybody always wanted to be a Raider now. We get you, we get you some silver and black.
We'll come visit in Vegas. We'll all come out there.
Yeah, that's the problem. Everybody wants to come visit Vegas. We need home field advantage.
Yeah.
I know. Oh, it is tough. It is tough. There's a lot of red out there when the Chiefs are there. I know that.
That's right. That's what I understand. I was not at that game.
Yeah. Well, Coach, thanks so much, and best of luck this season.
You're welcome, guys.
Thank you, Coach.
All right, there he goes.
All right.
Marvin Lewis, one of the absolute best guys in the NFL. I'm going to tell you, I got a chance to interview him when he was getting the 101, the AFC Coach of the Year award for the 101 awards, and I remember talking to him just how he was a rock star defensive coordinator with the Ravens. That defense was why they were winning, and he was just getting hit with question after question after question, and he couldn't have been nicer then. He was the Coach of the Year, couldn't have been nicer then. He's one of those guys that shows you can be a good guy and be a successful coach, Jeff. I mean, that's one of the things I take away from every time I talk to Marvin Lewis.
Yeah, no, he's stand-up guy, classy guy. I mean, he's again texted him, asked him to come on the show. He's no problem, be right there. And I really enjoy because I got to be around him at Arizona State when he was there with Herm. I went out there a couple of years ago and spoke to their football team, and it was kind of cool to see some of those old guys hanging out and just talking to him and getting his perspective. I think he's really enjoying where he's at in his life right now in his career. I mean, it's all that pressure you get when being the head guy is out the window. You can just be the guy they call up and ask for suggestions, and you offer that consigliere role, right? Tom Hayden role to Al Pacino in The Godfather. But I think he'll help Antonio Pierce be a better coach. I think he'll be good for that franchise. So I'm excited to see him back in the NFL because I think he's a great dude. He's always been great to me.
I thought Eric made a great point when he brought that up about the veteran coaches mentoring young guys, and it's something that has been much more. It's been a baseball thing, right? Like baseball will go. Somebody gets fired, like, oh, that guy's talented. Well, we don't have an opening. I don't care. Bring him in, and we'll figure out where to use him. Football's never had that mindset. We have our pro player personnel, and we have our director of college scouting, and we have our general manager. And when those jobs are filled, guys in the NFL sit out for a whole – they don't get hired on the cycle. They're done for a whole nother year, right? And it's not until a year later. Teams don't just go add those guys. And to Eric's point, Eric, how many teams are doing that now where they bring in the veteran? Okay, we got this rock star guy with the great young, fresh ideas, but somebody needs to show snot knows how to do it. Let's make sure we bring in a veteran guy. How many teams are doing it that way now?
Well, it's not that many. I mean – I remember when Leslie Frazier was the head coach of the Vikings, like he brought in like Mike Singletary and guys who have been head coaches before. I always felt like that was a somewhat of a shrewd move so that he could, have guys who have made those mistakes before. So,
yeah.
Well, and you're seeing GMs. I know that, Eric worked with Thomas Dimitroff when Scott Pioli got fired. I know they were friends, and Thomas was a veteran GM, but bring in someone like that to help him with decision making. I've seen obviously John Dorsey's meant a lot to the Detroit Lions behind the scenes. Like the Lions have drafted really well because John Dorsey's been there. I forgot about John Fox being in Indianapolis. He was there with who's the coach down there now? Was it before Frank? I think he was there with Frank Reich for a second.
Yeah,
But I think it's become, the reason it's happening more and more because the windows are so short now. Like these guys know I only have so much time to go out there and get stuff done. I got to think about all these different things. I might be fired in 2 or 3 years. So it's good for me to have as much help around me as I can get.
It seems like the Belichick approach of like, he wanted to train all his coaches and he wanted to train all of his scouts and wanted him to do it his way. The success of the Patriots, everybody wanted to mimic that and copy that, right? Like, oh, that's how Bill Belichick does it. We got to do it. Turns out Tom Brady was the bigger part of the puzzle. And I've just never understood in a salary cap league, there's no cap on coaches. There's no cap on scouts. There's no cap on, and if you can bring in seasoned veterans, I mean, to be able to have Marvin Lewis right there and have his wealth of knowledge, you're like, okay, hey, we got a tough one this week. Well, listen, when I was in Cincinnati with this guy, we had to do this, we had to do that. To be able to draw upon that knowledge to me is something that I don't understand why organizations don't do more of that. Well, to me, it's something that is a huge resource that's left untapped.
Well, I thought it was noteworthy that he mentioned that it wasn't that long ago that he was co-coordinating the defense with Arizona State with him. And so that was not that long ago. And now he's the head coach. And so he didn't go through too much, climbing the corporate ladder to get to this job. So there's a lot that he has to learn on the fly that, I've talked to friends about the Raiders and situation there. And it's just like, I think who was the assistant coach was Kingsbury. I think there was some questions about whether he would go there because he didn't know if there was going to be a commitment made to him beyond a couple of years. So I think that Antonio's being really smart about having Marvin there to help him through this process.
Will it succeed, Eric?
The deck stacked against interim coaches that become the head coach. The reason I asked Marvin Lewis what I asked him is like, I think that this is unique, right? Like Marvin Lewis was a above 500 coach for a lot of years for the Cincinnati Bengals. That's an impressive feat. So, look, he's giving himself a shot.
Yeah, no doubt. I do love, look, when I brought up, he said, oh, we're just kidding. Patrick Mahomes?
There were no parts of that.
But I'll go back to what's the team that's had the most success against the Chiefs doesn't try to be their buddy. It's the Cincinnati Bengals. They smack talk them. Now they've got the quarterback. There was a lot of great comments in the chat. I don't want to distract Coach Lewis because he's not used to all of our comments firing in. But I was reading through them as guys were bringing him up there. Like, his career, even with Carson Palmer, he largely spent his career with Alex Smith, right? He never had his Joe Burrow. What would it have been if he'd had Joe Burrow or Patrick Mahomes? Everybody'd be better, right? He had a pretty good one in Carson Palmer. Maybe their best year, Carson Palmer got his knee busted at the beginning of the playoff game. But I don't know that anybody ever did more with less. I mean, I don't know if people remember. The Bengals were a dumpster fire when it came to personnel. Like, they were known as having one scout and all that. And Marvin Lewis went in there and did it. Do you remember the NFL? It was a Hard Knocks year. What was with the Bengals? Mm-hmm. And they always show the coach, and he's driving in at 4:00 in the morning or whatever. And he gets to the facility and the gate won't go up. Yeah. Like his key card isn't working to get in, whether it's deactive. And he just laughed. He had the, he didn't get all pissed off or anything, but you could be like, well, here we go. Same old Bengals. They just opened their new facility and like he could have been and he just backed up, drove his truck up over the curb and up over another curb and went around the thing, like kind of four-wheeled his way in there. And he kind of giggled, had this cute little giggle as he drove on in and went on and did his thing. He never let anything bother him.
Yeah, well, Eric knows this from living in Cincinnati, and he made the comment about Clark Hunt and the money they have with this whole renovation vote that's maybe going down in flames as we speak. But I guarantee you Mike Brown's a lot less money. The Browns family is nowhere near close to having what the Hunt family has. And you saw that in the setup. For them to have an indoor practice facility now, and Eric knows this, when you would go there, you'd have to drive in there, and it's like the locker rooms, everything's right under the stadium, like it's like 1985 back in the day. They don't have anywhere close to the types of resources that most NFL teams have. Not even the Chiefs, really. They got their own separate facility here. But it shows you like what he did with that program when he got there. And I asked him that question because I wanted to see what it was like for him to go back there and see where it is now, because it is different now. And they are a lot more new age in how they do stuff. And the idea of Joe Burrow having a $300 million contract would have been mind blowing in that franchise 6 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. What should the Raiders do? Do they need to put whatever it takes to move up and grab one of the top quarterbacks, Eric?
I mean, I think yes, but they're going to have competition, right? The Vikings, the Denver Broncos in their own division. The car, like my thing is their hope has got to be what New England passes on one. Yeah, like they're going to have to try, but they're going to have be battling with the New York Giants, the Minnesota Vikings, the Denver Broncos. I think this is a year where it might be really tough for them to do so.
Jeff, I go back to the Donovan McNabb year when Tim Couch went 1, McNabb went 2, Achilles Smith went 3. Dante Culpepper, I think, went about 10 or 11.
11, yeah.
11. And then
Cade
McNown went like 15 or something, right? And McNabb and Culpepper, 2 of 5, made it go.
Yeah.
Show hand. Who thinks Caleb? Which quarterbacks do you know that guy's going to be? Let's say Culpepper-esque, McNabb-esque. Like, does anybody want to say Caleb Williams is definitely a Super Bowl champ? Is definitely an MVP? Like, what do you think? Because the other alternative is, can you sit at 13 or even trade back from 13 and get Michael Penix? And are we convinced that he's not going to be the guy? Like, where do you sit on the quarterbacks?
I think Caleb Williams is going to be good because I think the Bears have spent the last 2 years building a real roster, and that matters. I think then whoever the Vikings pick is going to be pretty good because the Vikings have a decent roster. I think Kwesi has a clue. So I think everybody else, it depends upon where they go. Like the Broncos don't really have a roster because they spent $1 billion on Russell Wilson and it didn't work. And they've had to offload everybody. I think the Raiders kind of similarly, right? To me, I think that there's one blue chip quarterback. Maybe Drake May is another one. And then after that, it kind of depends upon where the guys go.
But you think Drake May, right? You think one of those 4 guys might drop, right? You said that before.
I think that JJ McCarthy I think there's a lot of smoke. I think, for one, I'm not sure that New England's going to take a quarterback.
That's blasphemy coming out of your mouth.
Yeah.
I think it's not clear that New England's going to take a quarterback, and it's not clear to me that JJ McCarthy is going to go that as high as everybody thinks.
We're proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor. Parking lot problems, they're not a problem. They've been making them disappear since 1994. Don't risk accidents and liability in your parking lot. Get that brightly striped lot done right now. That's what Gann Asphalt and Concrete does. Whether it's the bumpers, the signage, the striping, the ceiling, or building it from new, Gann Asphalt and Concrete, one contractor, all things parking lot. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com. All right, so we got all the 5. Let's go down through Penix and Nick, or 6. Penix and Nix, right? Who do you think is going to be the real deal? Like,
I like guys who throw a lot. So I think Michael Penix is undervalued in that way, and he played in a pretty high octane offense that I think is very close to what they do in the NFL. So I like guys who throw on schedule. I think he is probably, of all the guys who's not getting a lot of hype, probably has the best chance to be a success. I like Caleb Williams' skill set, and I agree with what Eric said, that the situation for him is going to be good in Chicago. I feel like Jayden Daniels might end up in a bad situation. I feel like Drake May might end up in a bad situation. The thing about McCarthy that's encouraging is that I think people know he needs a year to sit. And so he's not as likely to be rushed into play. So whoever's going to take him is going to end up having a setup kind of like what they had with Mahomes in Kansas City with Alex Smith, having a mentor for him. I will say, being at their pro day, it was noteworthy that Adam Peters was there, general manager for the Commanders. Sean Payton was not there, although George Payton was, their GM was there, and the only representative for the Vikings was Josh McCown. And so usually if you're that excited about a quarterback and want to see him in person, you want to see him in person and you want to have as many eyeballs on him as you can. So I think that told me a lot about, like what Eric is saying, the Vikings may not be as high on McCarthy as some people have suggested.
All right, Eric, where do you sit?
Okay, so with the caveat that, like, we're all pretty bad at this, the one guy that I think is going to be better than and he's back to being the favorite to be the second pick. I think Drake May is going to be good. I like the size. I like the arm strength. I like the movement skills. I agree with Bucky Brooks on the kind of the physicality you need to play quarterback at the position. I think if JJ McCarthy goes to the Vikings at 4, I think he'll be good because I think they'll sit him for a year behind Sam Darnold. I think Kevin O'Connell's got a clue, and it's a pretty you got to really freaking suck to have Justin Jefferson and Christian Darrisaw and Kevin O'Connell and that kind and one of the best facilities in the NFL and ownership that actually spends money. So those 3 I think will be good in the NFL. I think and I think out of the later round guys, I think Michael Penix has a shot. But I think Penix and Nix, I would be surprised if they go in round 1.
Okay, and you've always said the under 4.5, right? On the wager.
I just think NFL teams, after you weed out the first, like the blue chip guys, they're always going to want like tackles, corners, wideouts. Like they don't want that. They don't want like guys like Dimitrov. Thomas calls me every Sunday afternoon disgusted with like Kirk Cousins. Like they just don't like middling quarterbacks. And they like and these guys, their average career is 3.5 years. They're not going to spend one of their first round picks on a mid quarterback. Like they're just not.
Yeah. I like Drake May as well, but the more I look at it, the more I think if he goes to New England, I think anybody goes to New England,
That's a disaster.
That is going to be a rough go.
Yeah.
I like the more, I hadn't really given it much thought. Like, hey, you get a chance at quarterback, you got to go get him. But Eric's point, I don't know if it was last week or 2 weeks ago, about if New England really should be just punting next year as well, right? Like, and say we're going to trade back, we're going to get picks, we're going to build the roster, and then we'll come back with a quarterback later on because, and I don't know, are we convinced Cliff Kingsbury is a high-level offensive coordinator in the NFL?
No.
And I also the only fear I have about Caleb Williams is I've had a number of people, talk about, hey, when you scout Alabama or now you scout Georgia, they're so good. Everyone's so good. You don't know, is a guy not that good and just getting a ride for free because he's a linebacker and he never has to shed a block because the D-line's so good in front of him. I do worry that, like Michael Penix maybe is a little inflated because his receivers are good, but I do like how he stands in there. He drops it in. But to your point about him, who was the best receiver Patrick Mahomes was throwing to at Texas Tech? Kiki Kute, who I saw in the
UFL ledge, by the way.
That's right. Had a touch in the UFL. I think it was called back, though, wasn't it? Because of penalties.
You guys are watching that?
I watched a little UFL. Yeah, I watched a little UFL. There was a ledge spitting incident and a personal foul penalty that went on, but Kiki Kute was there. But, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think the quarterback, like, you to your point, Eric, like, usually you got to draft it, find out, and if it's not it, draft it again and keep doing it. And I just don't know where they're going to go with it. So, I don't know. I do like Drake May. I do worry about Jayden Daniels' build. Like, Jared Goff's the most successful skinny quarterback we've seen. I mean, he will fill out.
He doesn't play like Jared Goff either.
No, and that was the knock on Goff, is that he came in at like 194 or something. And like nobody had gone 1-1 under 200 pounds before that. Isn't that right, Eric? I'm right on that, aren't I?
Yeah, he was skinny. I think he was the skinniest, like, top pick.
How big was Lamar Jackson when he came out?
But he was 32nd, right?
And that's what I'm saying. But but like size wise, wasn't he a pretty skinny guy in college? Or maybe I'm misremembering that.
Yeah. I don't know. There's going to be quarterbacks flying. I think it'll be interesting. That's the spot that dictates where everything goes. So we'll see where they land up. With free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project coming with a written warranty. Gann Asphalt and Concrete. They keep your parking lot safer, help you and your business make a great first impression. Also avoid unnecessary delays and costly expenses. Gann Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor. All things concrete. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com. I want to thank again Marvin Lewis for joining us. Great to get Coach Lewis. Thanks, Jeff, for hooking that up and bringing him on. One of the best guys you're going to find in coaching. I do hate that he's a Raider, though. That sucks because he is a great guy. For Jeff Chadiha from the NFL Network, Eric Eager from Sumer Sports, I'm Soren Petro saying thank you very much for joining us here on the Two Deep NFL Podcast.